yesterday I was watching some good old-fashioned propaganda, and it was queued up, and now it's not. So hold on a second. Okay, I wasn't exactly sure how to prime this, so this is how I'm going to do it. Here is a quick montage of Build Back Better. Okay, Build Back Better. Here we go. Maybe here we go.
Back better.
To build back better or whatever.
Or whatever.
We have a chance to reset the clock and build back better than before.
To build back better than before.
Remember the terrible damage of COVID as we try to build back from this global pandemic.
Joe Biden calls it Build Back Better.
Build back better.
Oh.
Building back better.
To do things different.
Sorry, I know I shouldn't have unpaused it. That always happens, right? Every time. So I was watching some good old-fashioned propaganda, an X-Men movie. This is the new grouping of X-Men movies, the Reset, the X-Men New Class or whatever. And Apocalypse said something, like the movie was X-Men Apocalypse. And I read comics back in the day, so I remember the Apocalypse story. He had lots of storylines, but what doesn't matter. But this little speech stuck out to me yesterday when we were watching this, so just have a listen. This is a very interesting thing. And I'm not trying to infringe on anyone's copyright. I'm using this for explanation and parallels to what's currently happening in our society, okay? So we've seen Hillary Clinton, we've seen Greta and Justin Trudeau say Build Back Better, and here's Apocalypse saying the same. Hold on. I hope the volume is okay. So Apocalypse is encouraging him. This is like pure propaganda, okay? From the images flashing to what Apocalypse is saying, but it lines up nice and neat with Build Back Better. Here we go.
Everything they built will fall! And from the ashes of their world, we'll build a better one!
Oh. Pure propaganda. However, try to pause it. So, Build Back Better, right? Right, Boris?
To build back better.
We're going to build it back better.
And build it back better.
Oh, Pocahontas, Barack Obama. Oh my goodness, Build Back Better. It's like a who's who of people you thought were like, good politicians in 2008, or some people thought were good politicians in 2008, and now are awful, terrible, evil people. Right? Oh goodness. And who would have thought that the host of The Apprentice would have been the one to make them expose themselves? Right? What an interesting turn of events. But yeah, I thought the Apocalypse talking about Build Back Better was certainly worth noting. Really. Okay, our top story for today, I think, is about gasoline, because part of and travel, the cost of travel. We're going to talk about COVID passports later in the show. But right now I want to talk about travel. Did you ever watch Columbo? I love Columbo. Just one more thing, right? If your electric car runs out of power on the interstate, do you walk to a charging station to get a bucket of electricity? How does that work exactly? How are you going to fix it for yourself? But it was independence. It was the ability to go wherever you wanted. If you wanted to drive out of state, or if you wanted to drive wherever, you could do that. You could achieve that with the cheap automobile and cheap gas. And, the whole North America was your oyster. They had national parks. Canada had national parks. You could drive to them. You could go on a family vacation. You could access the remote parts of our country, no problems at all. And they want to change this fundamentally and incrementally through not legislation, but through nudging and legislation that you're enthusiastically in favor of, right? Things that they can say you're calling for, you're demanding for, right? The public wants this. They need this. That's why we're doing this for you, right? We wouldn't do it otherwise, they say. But I don't believe them, because I think this is all part of the plan. I've talked a lot about how the gas prices, the carbon taxes in BC haven't resulted in a reduction in tons of CO2 in the air. Like I say, how much CO2 have you removed from the atmosphere, Gerald Kootenai? And he says, you are aggressive and we don't like to talk to people like you. And I say, okay, well, that's weird. I just asked a question. So it results in increased prices and no reduction in CO2 output, right? And no reduction in tons of CO2 in the atmosphere per year. Weird, right? Crazy. It seems like a cash grab, doesn't it? Here is a further explanation. This is out in BC, where $1.72 are the gas prices. In Ontario, it's $1.30 a liter. And the last time it was $1.30 a liter, a barrel of crude was at $100 a barrel, and even like above that. And $1.30, people were like, wow, that's very expensive. And this is all taxes. Now a barrel of crude, I believe, is $70 a barrel. So this is all taxes that we're paying now. And can you afford that? Isn't that punitive? Here is somebody who's smarter than me to talk about this. There you go. Probably. Okay, we'll try it again like this.
As much as 65 cents a liter to the price of gas through taxes and other insidious policies like the so-called clean fuel standard. And now Justin Trudeau wants to take these exact same policies and implement them right across the country, on top of increasing the existing carbon tax, and this is true, by more than 400%. A move that would almost guarantee $2 gas, not only here in BC, but across every other province as well. Look, people who drive themselves to work or their kids to school shouldn't be punished for what is, for many, an essential activity, especially seeing as it accomplishes nothing for the environment, and China continues to build new coal-fired plants every single week. Instead, it's time to put the concerns of hardworking, everyday Canadians first, not sending them and their priorities to the back of.
Right, and that's where our priorities tend to sit, right? Here is Reuters talking about EU proposing effective ban for fossil fuel cars from 2035. This is going to be done specifically to make driving completely unaffordable for the regular person. Rich people who can afford multiple cars that they can charge one while they drive the other, they will have cars. Other people, poor people, won't have cars. And poor people, you won't be able to get a $10,000 cheap clunker, right? Like that. This is a big problem, okay? The European Union on Wednesday proposed an effective ban on the sale of new petrol and diesel cars from 2035, aiming to speed up the switch to zero-emission electric vehicles as part of a broad package to measures to combat global warming. Now, it doesn't talk about the carbon impact, the CO2 impact of building an electric vehicle. It doesn't talk about the batteries needed or the recycling of the batteries or the fact that there is no plan to recycle the batteries or what to do with cars that need battery replacements when the battery is worth more than the car is worth, right? Capitalism, right? These problems were solved, and now forget that, throw it out the window. The EU, back to the article. The EU executive of the European Commission proposed a 55% cut in CO2 emissions from cars by 2030 versus 2021 levels, much higher than the existing target of 30.5% reduction by then. It also proposed a 100% cut in CO2 emissions by 2035, which would make it impossible to sell new fossil fuel powered vehicles in the 27 country bloc. Now, if you own a bunch of gas powered vehicles and or the means to produce them at a cheap rate, you will make a lot of money post 2035 until they make it illegal to sell used cars, right? Repurposed cars or whatever. Canada to ban sales of new fuel powered cars and light trucks from 2035. So for about 15 years, there'll be a really massive non-electric market, like used market, and then they'll ban it, I'm sure. Or the Liberals will be kicked out of power and will return to sanity. Ha! LOL. I think the same people are running now. But this goes through. Canada will ban the sale of fuel-burning new cars and light trucks from 2035 in an effort to reach net zero emissions across the country by 2050. The pandemic has made really clear to me that the science of this global warming is about as robust as the science of you must mask to protect yourself from this virus, which is to say flimsy at best. So very, very interesting. Scott Moe is upset. The Liberal rejection of Saskatchewan carbon plan is a cynical ploy to punish Tory voting West. And Scott Moe says the Trudeau government cannot have one standard for the East and another for the West. Ha! You haven't been paying attention, Mr. Moe. No, you have not. We have long said that Saskatchewan is part of the solution. It's about time they recognize it. Well, the Liberals don't care. The Liberals don't care what you say. It is, in my opinion, certainly retribution for joining the lawsuit against the carbon taxes, right? So that's what you get, playing games against Trudeau, right? And it's interesting because I didn't see the political retribution when I was younger. I just saw it as political maneuvering, and I thought, well, some people won't like it, but so other people will, so it'll be okay. But certainly punishing the public who are kind of split anyway, even in the best of times, you've got a split public. Even at 60-40, it's a split public. Like, not everybody agrees on everything, right? Like, and 60-40 is a very strong majority. You'd say that's a lot of happy people there, right? But well, look at Alberta. Whoops. Anyway, Financial Post, moving on. This fall's ballot question: what does your climate policy cost? Our recent Swiss vote was a sharp reminder that costly climate policies can stoke voter anger. One can only hope. Last month's Swiss referendum, that's difficult to say, on climate change and other environmental policies has received little attention in Canada, even though, as the BBC reported, it was a huge shock. The Swiss, stereotypically concerned about the beauty of their alpine environment, rejected their government's proposals to fulfill a 2015 commitment to reduce 1990 emission levels by 50% by 2030. The Swiss are devoted to direct democracy. If at least 50,000 citizens sign a petition or 8 cantons request it, any federal law is subject to a national referendum. The climate referendum, based on a law passed by the Swiss Assembly that included levies on fuel and airline tickets, was rejected by 51.6% of voters. 2 other environmental proposals to outlaw artificial pesticides and provide substitutes to farmers using fewer chemicals, or subsidies to farmers using fewer chemicals, was rejected by fully 61% of voters. Voters didn't veto everything. Referenda on COVID relief and police hiring to counter terrorism got strong support. Interesting. All parties except the People's Party backed the new climate measures, so why did the Swiss reject it? As Bill Clinton would say, it's the economy, stupid. Voters were concerned about economic recovery in a world in which Switzerland is responsible for only 0.1% of greenhouse gas emissions. The Swiss vote should be a sharp reminder to governments that climate policies that are believed to be costly can stoke voter anger. We saw that in Ontario in 2018 when the governing Liberals were turfed from office by concern over the high utility bills. Despite implementing various cost reduction measures, the Wynne government was saddled with expensive sole-sourced contracts for wind and solar electricity awarded by the McGuinty government. Those subsidies were put on the backs of Ontario ratepayers who saw their electricity bills jump even after the sharp decline in energy prices after 2014. Modernization brings cheaper costs, but we spent a lot of money on green initiatives that didn't pan out. So we have to pay those debts back, which is why our cost of electricity is skyrocketing, because the contracts aren't done yet, but we're still paying for them. I'm not exactly sure of the status if we're still paying for them, but our electricity is still very expensive. So, and it shouldn't be, but here we are.